10 bets, 10 legends, and the razor-thin line between ruin and reward. Most people treat money like a fragile heirloom, wrap it in a savings account and pray nothing breaks. But every so often, someone takes a huge leap and comes back with an epic story. Not every risk pays. But when it doesn't just build wealth. It rewires what the rest of us believe is possible. Welcome to the Money Compendium. Today, we're decoding the psychology, the strategy, and the moments where big chances paid off. Some bet on products, some on probability, some on persistence. And a few didn't even realize they were gambling until the jackpot landed. Number 1, Sara Blakely. A $5,000 bet on a pair of scissors. Before headlines crowned her a billionaire, Sara Blakely was sweating in Florida heat, selling fax machines door to door. The uniform? Stiff heels, tight pantyhose, rejection after rejection. The grind was relentless. One night, looking for an easy way to give both comfort and coverage without creating noticeable seams, she took scissors to her pantyhose, cut off the feet, and slipped them under white pants. With only $5,000 in savings, she filed her own patent, sketched packaging in bold red so it wouldn't disappear on shelves, and cold-called hosiery mills until one finally said yes. Buyers laughed at first, until Neiman Marcus took a chance. Then lightning struck. Oprah featured Spanx on her favorite things list in 2000. Orders exploded. That $5,000 bet turned into a global brand and years later, billionaire status. Sara risked ridicule and all her savings, but she learned that sometimes risking it all pays off. And if you think that's daring, wait until you hear about the man who beat the casino. Not with luck, but with a contract. Number 2, Don Johnson, the gambler who rewrote the rules of the house. In 2011, Atlantic City casinos were desperate. The recession had emptied their high roller rooms. Don Johnson walked in, not as a card counter, but as a negotiator. He didn't cheat. He asked for terms so favorable they shifted the math. High limits, dealers forced to stand on soft 17, resplits tilted toward the player. And most dangerously for the casinos, a 20% loss rebate. That meant if he dropped $1 million in a night, the casino quietly wired him back $200K. But if he won, he kept every penny. With flawless blackjack discipline, the edge tilted. Over a few months, he raked in $15 million in combined earnings across several casinos. By the time they realized what happened, it was already too late. This wasn't luck. It was probability, leverage, and a poker face carved from stone. Sometimes you don't have to cheat the system. You just have to negotiate it. Number 3, Kristoffer Koch, $27, one lost password, one surreal payday. In 2009, Bitcoin was a curiosity, not an investment. Kristoffer spent $27 on some coins and moved on. Years passed. In 2013, headlines broke about Bitcoin's rise. Kristoffer dug through old files, unearthed a password, logged in, and stared at a balance worth nearly $800K. That's not savvy trading. That's asymmetric payoff. Risking money you can lose on an idea you understand, then letting time do the heavy lifting. The lesson isn't buy every shiny new coin. It's this. Sometimes the smallest bets can explode in ways that change your life. But not all explosions are accidents. Some are engineered from basements with maxed out credit cards and family faith hanging by a thread. Number 4, Robert Herjavec, a basement hustle with a $30 million exit. Before Shark Tank fame, Robert Herjavec was just grinding. Retail shifts, delivering papers, and clawing toward tech work. In the 1990s, he saw something most ignored: cybersecurity. Hackers were the shadows of the internet, and he believed businesses would pay for protection. So he started Brack Systems out of his basement. Lean, broke, maxing credit cards, and leaning on family loans. He hustled sales, built relationships, and chased contracts with urgency because survival demanded it. By 2000, AT&T Canada acquired Brack for about $30 million. He wasn't done. In 2003, he launched Herjavec Group, growing it into one of North America's biggest independent cybersecurity firms. His gamble wasn't luck or timing alone. It was betting his reputation, his debt, and his family's faith on a hunch that fear itself could become a service. That risk forged a fortune. Not every risk is financial. Some are emotional, invisible, and written in rejection letters that pile high on a struggling single mother's desk. Number 5. J.K. Rowling. 12 rejections, 1 stroller, and a rough start. Mid-1990s. Joanne Rowling was broke, a single mother living on welfare, grieving losses, and scribbling chapters in cafes where the coffee was cheaper than heating her apartment. She pushed her daughter's stroller between publishers, manuscript in hand. And one after another, 12 rejections landed. Too long, too strange, too childish. Finally, a tiny press gave her a chance, just a few hundred copies. But soon came awards, sequels, midnight book launches, films, theme parks, merchandise. The Harry Potter universe became a cultural and financial empire worth billions. Her risk was existential, choosing to keep writing when the world was laughing. And sometimes that's the bravest bet of all, staking your identity when people say nothing will come of it. If these stories are stirring something, if a piece of you is thinking, it's my turn, hit like so this conversation finds the next risk taker. Subscribe so you don't miss the deep dives, frameworks, and breakdowns we build for you every week. Drop a comment with next bet, and fill in one small asymmetric risk you'll take in the next 30 days. $50 testing an idea, 1 email to a mentor, 1 prototype, 1 pitch. Your public promise is the first nudge toward a victory. Number 6. Michael Burry, the man who saw the collapse coming. In the mid-2000s, America was drunk on the housing boom. McMansions sprang up like mushrooms after rain, banks handed out mortgages to anyone with a pulse, and Wall Street packaged those shaky loans into securities that glittered like gold on the outside but rotted on the inside. Michael Burry, a one-eyed former neurologist turned hedge fund manager, sat in a dim office, poring over thousands of pages of mortgage bond prospectuses. The more he read, the more his stomach turned. Hidden in the fine print were ticking time bombs, adjustable-rate mortgages set to explode, bundled together and sold as safe investments. While the world cheered record home prices, Burry quietly began buying credit default swaps, insurance that would pay off if those mortgage bonds collapsed. It was a bet against the most powerful machine in the global economy. Colleagues mocked him. Investors threatened lawsuits. But in 2008, when the market imploded, Burry's fund made more than $700 million for his clients, and he walked away with his own fortune. The cost? Years of isolation, relentless stress, and the constant weight of being the guy who must be wrong. Until he wasn't. Sometimes the path to fortune isn't about walking with the crowd, it's about standing alone in the dark, certain that dawn is coming. And speaking of men who beat impossible odds, the next one didn't bet against an economy, he beat a casino. Number 7. Edward Thorp, the math professor who broke the house. Picture Las Vegas in the early 1960s. Neon lights buzzing, cigarette smoke curling in the air, the rhythmic slap of cards on green felt. Into this world of sharp suits and sharper dealers walked Edward Thorp, not a gambler by trade, but a humble mathematics professor. Thorp had been tinkering with an idea. Could probability theory actually tilt the odds in blackjack? The answer, painstakingly calculated with pen and paper, was yes. He discovered a method, now known as card counting, that let a skilled player know when the deck was stacked in their favor. Testing his system in the casinos, Thorp won consistently. Then he published Beat the Dealer, a book that sent shockwaves through Vegas. The casinos fought back, shuffling decks faster, banning known counters and changing the rules. But the damage was done. Thorp had proved the house edge wasn't invincible. And he didn't stop there. He took the same models to Wall Street, founding a hedge fund that produced over 20% annual returns for decades. His gamble wasn't luck or impulse. It was precision, discipline, and knowing when to strike. The lesson? You don't have to be the loudest in the room to be the most dangerous player at the table. And while Thorp's wins were built on genius-level math, Our next fortune came from something far stranger and far starchier. Number 8. Alex Craig, the potato prophet. In 2015, Alex Craig pitched his girlfriend a business idea so ridiculous it sounded like the setup to a bad joke. Mailing people actual potatoes with custom messages written on them. No digital product, no fancy branding, just a Sharpie, a spud, and the internet's insatiable hunger for weird. She laughed in his face. But Craig wasn't joking. He called it potato parcel. Within weeks, photos of personalized potatoes were bouncing around social media. Orders poured in from people who wanted to send absurd birthday wishes, inside jokes, and even marriage proposals via Tuber. Within a few months, Craig had banked nearly $40,000. Soon after, he sold the business for a reported six-figure sum. The gamble was simple. Lean hard into the ridiculous and trust the internet to eat it up. And it worked. Sometimes success isn't about being taken seriously. It's about being unforgettable. And speaking of unforgettable, the next story will remind you what's possible when you've got nothing left but grit. Number 9. Gardner, from subway bathrooms to Wall Street. Gardner's life in the early 1980s was a storm with no safe harbor. Homeless, raising a toddler alone, sleeping in subway station bathrooms. Yet every morning he put on his one suit, grabbed his briefcase, and showed up to compete for an unpaid brokerage internship. The odds? Nearly impossible. Dozens of candidates, all with more connections, more money, and safer lives. But Gardner had something they didn't, an unbreakable will to outwork every single person in that office. Day after day, he learned the business, made the calls, and stayed longer than anyone else. Eventually, he landed the job. From there, he rose through the ranks, started his own firm, and became a multimillionaire. His gamble wasn't just about money. It was about staking his entire future on the belief that if he just kept showing up, something would break his way. If you think the odds are against you, remember Gardner. Sometimes the win isn't about perfect timing. It's about refusing to stop moving. And our last story, it's about betting every dollar you have, not on the market, but on yourself. Number 10. MrBeast, the king of reinvestment. Long before he was one of the most watched creators on the planet, Jimmy Donaldson, MrBeast, was just a teenager in North Carolina, uploading YouTube videos from his bedroom. The production quality? Rough. The profits? Barely enough for fast food. But Jimmy had a different vision. Every time he earned money, instead of keeping it, he spent it. On bigger stunts, wilder challenges, and massive giveaways. $100 became $1,000. $1,000 became $10,000. The scale kept growing until his videos became events the internet couldn't ignore. For years, he lived modestly, pouring every cent back into his channel. Friends thought he was crazy. Family worried it would all collapse. But he kept going. Today, his empire spans multiple channels, businesses, and billions of views. His gamble? Sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term dominance. The takeaway? Don't cash out on your dream too early. Growth requires patience, reinvestment, and the courage to keep pushing when no one else sees the payoff yet. From Michael Burry betting against an economy, to Alex Craig turning potatoes into gold, to MrBeast building an empire from nothing, the common thread isn't luck. It's conviction. It's the willingness to stand alone, to look foolish, to hold your ground while the world shakes its head. Every one of these people took risks that could have ruined them. But they moved forward anyway, with skill, strategy, and the belief that the reward was worth the danger. And when the payoff came, it was life-changing. So maybe your big gamble isn't in markets or casinos. Maybe it's in launching that idea you've been sitting on, learning the skill that scares you, building something so strange or bold that people laugh until they see it works. Because the only guaranteed way to lose is never to play. This is the Money Compendium. Think in decades, act in systems, and once in a while, bet big on yourself. Now go. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs their spark lit. Your next big win might be closer than you think.